Welcome back to this month's Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in marketing, brokerage, financing, government policy, capital construction, cybersecurity. As always, this is a three-part show. Part one, introductions and what's new for each of our Roundtable hosts in their business sector. Part two, we unpack and dive deep into the month's biggest news and trends affecting your bottom line. Part three, what does it mean and how do you adapt? How do you survive? How do you thrive in the next 30 days? I'm Andreas, Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and commercial director of KW. And joining me this month is none other than Dan Wagner, Senior VP, Government Relations at the Inland Group of Companies. Dan, always a pleasure to see you and Lincoln there in the background.
It's great being here, and appreciate always the opportunity to be able to talk to our wonderful show. And as you always tell me, we are growing by leaps and bounds. So what's the latest on our numbers?
Oh, you're going to catch me off guard. The latest on our numbers are 3257 tune in and downloads monthly, which is incredible. Our audience is now top three audiences, 79% North America, 13% in Europe, and 4% in Asia, which is incredible because who would have thought? The internet just keeps going. But it's been an incredible journey together. Thank you for pointing that out. So before we jump in, let's get to the rest of our hosts today. Anna Maria Kowalik, SVP, Director of Business Development, Inland All Things Green Capital, has joining us back from CPACE Nation, I believe. Anna Maria, nice to see you.
Yes, good afternoon and evening to everyone across the nation, across the world. This is a wonderful platform. Thank you very much, Andreas.
Thank
you. We appreciate you as host.
Well, couldn't do it without you. We're all co-hosting it together.
Excellent.
And CPACE is growing so brightly. You have sunglasses on tonight, so we're
well. I just wanted to be the cool kid tonight. I actually had my eyes dilated for an eye appointment. So sorry, everybody, but the lights are too bright in here. It's so wonderful. LED lighting, made possible by CPACE.
And certainly not last but not least today. Joining us, Rebecca Carlson, CEO Carlson Integrated, a brokerage owner herself out of Chicago. We're a bit heavy in Chicagoland. I better scrap all my notes for the Northeast for today.
We're taking over, Andreas.
Well, apparently not. Asia and Europe is kind of catching up here with our audience. We've got to thank Darren for that. He's always the one traveling overseas. So I got to at least give him some credit. That being said, Anna Maria, your glasses, believe it or not, these glasses as well. These are UV blocking glasses. I get headaches from my screens. So as much as I love CPACE and funding, my eyes aren't dilated, but they are, all these rays and all this stuff. It's just getting in the way.
That's right. And I do have those as well for, when I'm working during the day. So that really helps with deterioration and macular degeneration and all that great stuff that you have to worry about at some point in your life, So.
Well, if you should worry sooner and be prepared for longer and live.
Exactly.
Right.
I was a Girl Scout, so always be prepared.
Well, so I'm going to give my three big changes nationwide. We're busy, so my confidence in the market is there. The Northeast, especially Connecticut, is thriving with opportunity. But at least this month, industrial rents averaged 7.5% over the past 12 months as an increase. So industrial is still moving in its pockets. Some pockets have high vacancy, but not in our markets, luckily. Manhattan, as always, recovering and striving to be the biggest and the best. Dare I say better than Chicago? Because I have to say it, I'm from New York. Closes $1.4 billion worth of office deals, redevelopment. We're moving. Things are happening. And then Boston leads the nation in development for office. So while I gave a hat tip to Chicagoland last show for the largest sale industrially, we're catching up. I'm telling you, we're going to have more statistics to put us at the top of your investment list. But Dan, I'm going to jump to you. How are things going in your world? What's going on in the government sector?
Well, thank you. Thanks, Andreas. The interesting thing that I keep always talking about is a 1031 like-kind exchange. And one of my premier things to do here at Inland is to promote, promulgate, and protect the flame of the 1031 because it's always ever important in growth and investment for commercial in our economy in the United States. We have Republicans and Democrats both want to try to take out the 1031 for different reasons. So it's going to be interesting to highlight. I was talking to a Republican leader in Congress last week, and he said that do not, under any circumstances, assume that when all the tax reform stuff is going to be coming up after this next election, that the 1031 is safe, even if the Republicans win the presidency and the House and Senate. And I said, well, why would you say that? Because we already went through the whole 1031 discussions during the last time when the Republicans were in charge, and they did the big tax reform through reconciliation almost 10 years ago. And he said, well, one of the things to remember is that, like in the Republican caucus, there's 87 new Republicans that are there that weren't there during the last go around during tax reform. And so they don't know about the 1031. And it's incumbent upon our industry to educate them. And I said, well, wouldn't they be more pro 1031 anyway? And he said, no, because one of the things that's out there is that some of the Republicans are in blue states and they're very interested in the SALT deductions. That's the mortgage interest deduction is capped at $10,000. And they'd like to see that grow, but they don't want to raise taxes. So one of the areas that they could try to use is the 1031. And so he's like, make sure you get out there and explain that the 1031 is just everything to our economy, and we have to wake people up about that. The Democrats, also talking to some Democrat leaders, they highlighted that again, President Biden put into his budget to cap the 1031 at $500,000, which is absolutely like getting rid of it. And they said that we really have to emphasize the importance of how the 1031 has built wealth for many Americans for over 100 years in the tax code, and why on earth, like for example, with the African American caucus, want to get rid of it, because the big deal for the African American world they talk about is passing on generational wealth, and it's so important that the 1031 still stay in the tax code because that is a big part of how wealth is grown in America is through the 1031. So
because the 1031 is not just for the wealthy. The key here is, yes, real estate investors use 1031 as a 401k, but
right.
Those that inherit property would otherwise not be able to sell said property without incurring massive debt. Capital gains, right?
Well, and Andreas, the other thing, like Danny Davis represents Bronzeville in the Chicago area. And Bronzeville had the Robert Taylor homes, which were a tenement housing project that were torn down. And for 10 years, all that land laid fallow, and it was a food desert. People who lived around there had no grocery stores. Well, lo and behold, somebody started developing a shopping center, and a big corporation from New York came and 1031 into that project and brought millions and millions and millions of dollars into a very underserved area. And you cannot, that money would never have come into that area if it wasn't for the 1031. And so when I was able to tell Danny Davis is that Congressman Davis, do you shop at the Mariano's? He's like, yeah, that's where my wife and I go and shop. And I said, well, the only way you can do that is because the 1031 was there to provide the money to build that. And so that's another real important thing that people forget about is the 1031 helps a lot of underserved communities because there's just no other way to have an economic development stimulus package that is so dynamic like the 1031.
Absolutely. And I'm still stunned by how many people I run into who don't know that they should 1031, right? We're talking owners with multiple properties, older owners that have been doing it a long time, don't know they can go into the DST for 1031. I mean, just, right? The rules are there. Use the rules and continue to grow. And these rules benefit all classes, all people, all nations, everywhere. I mean, Canada, it was under fire in Canada as well.
And Andreas, the other thing, again, I've said this before, you have an old, like in Naperville, Illinois, you had an old Kmart where this older gentleman had it for years. He would never sell because he would have been killed in capital gains. The town was going to condemn him. We were able to talk the town into teaching them about what a 1031 was as an economic tool. And then they were able to talk to the gentleman who owned it, who sold the property 1031 into an apartment complex, big apartment complexes. And then Costco bought it and was able to build the Costco. And that's where you see the huge synergy of how the 1031 works in our economy, and that the fact that the 1031, through all the different microeconomic studies, show it creates $19 billion worth of economic activity for our economy. And if you get rid of the 1031 or cap it at $500,000, you actually only bring in about 1.9 billion. So we say the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You're going to really lose about $17 billion of economic taxes for different at the local, state, national level of government. So it's a big deal to remind people and to educate people. And really, everybody on this call who's listening needs to get to know who their member of Congress is, to be able to say, hey, this is my commercial real estate business. This is one of the tools we use. Don't take it away. And the quicker we can do that, the better, because I'm telling you right now, people that are Republicans, people that are Democrats on Capitol Hill, they're sharpening their pencils and get their pens out, thinking, how can we make my pet project work? And this is the pot I'm going to go into, is the 1031. And, that's where we have to be able to explain to them, no, that can't happen. So anyway, that's maybe too long of an explanation, but I took some extra time there, so I apologize if I did. But
No. It's quite all right. Look, it's all about getting out there and educating, and not just educating, but staying top of mind. And who better to talk top of mind than Becca Carlson Integrated Marketing. We'll give her a moment to shine here as we go into this portion. Go ahead. What's going on in your world, Becca? And then we're going to jump to CPACE, because Saul's back there too. It's a surprise guest. He did make it today.
Woohoo! Yay. Right now we're navigating algorithm and platform changes. And it's always interesting to me how little fanfare is put forth to the public when a platform changes various elements of its algorithm and or its functionality, or things that worked 6 months ago on the platform and were prioritized are no longer prioritized. So LinkedIn in particular has made a number of changes over the past, call it 8 months, that have been very interesting. AI is what's purportedly bringing us content that we're interested in. I have not discovered that the AI and the algorithm are quite in tune with my interests yet, but I'm sure that it's learning as it goes. And we find with outbound communication and posts on that platform in particular right now, that we're understanding a new normal as far as reach, as far as interactions and engagements and things like that. So we're always navigating changes that we don't make, but we get. I always say that with search engines and with platforms, they're their sandboxes, and we all play in them, and we play by the rules, and we play nicely. And that's all the option that we have. So staying abreast of the changes has been a big piece of what my team has spent this summer doing.
Well, and it's a full-time job, which is why keeping surgeons in surgery, right? You hire brokers to do brokerage activities, to advise, you hire financiers, you hire marketers. It is a full-time job, as I understand. I don't want to do your job. AI and everything else. I do use AI a bunch of different ways now, and very cautiously every day. And I couldn't imagine adjusting to the algorithms. But I'll say it again: we've got a growing audience in Asia, which may or may not be AI, because that's a little far for our market trends. But we're loving it. Talking trends and changes. Anna Maria, you're back from CPACE Nation.
Yes.
Is AI affecting you as greatly as it's affecting the marketing world?
Not quite yet. I do know that there are people and platforms beginning to use it in our industry. I really haven't taken a broad leap into it yet. But in mid-June, I was at the CPACE or at the PACE Nation Summit, which PACE Nation is one of our largest industry organizations. And they held a 2-day program in Nashville. It was my first time there. And so got to see a little bit of the city and enjoy as well. And there were 3 primary topics that came up across the CPACE industry. And one was legislation. So to date, 38 states and Washington, D.C. are all enabled by CPACE legislation. And of course, if you'll remember, PACE must be legislated state by state due to each of the state's different tax law nuances. And so it's part of its name, commercial property assessed clean energy financing. So the property assessed portion is that special assessment mechanism through which the lien on the tax bill happens, and therefore there you have your tax related product. So now states are beginning to evolve their programs. So once a legislation is passed, a program administration has to be put in place to be able to monitor the compliance with of the CPACE transactions with the state legislation, as well as to provide some commonality among local governmental taxing authorities, so that there are a uniform set of documents and there are guidelines and rules and regulations. And so all of this comes together through a program administrator. And in many cases across the country, this is a third-party nonprofit organization doing this work. There are occasional municipalities, such as in Tennessee, where we were. City of Nashville has a governmentally run program. And so that's not uncommon to see either. But the legislation across the U.S., because of the nuances and sometimes because government likes to, take control and kind of put restrictions on certain things and, make sure that everybody's playing well in the sandbox, but sometimes ignores the business aspect of it. That's the driving force. And so there have been states with SIR qualifications, savings to investment ratios. And on some of the smaller projects that are just, one perhaps simple energy efficiency measure, that might not pan out, to be the greater than one in a savings ratio. Another one is the length of term. There were several states that had put a limit on CPACE financing at 20 years. And whereas most of the rest had started out at 25 and some even 30. And so more and more states are beginning to look at their legislation and modify and amend their statutes to be more reflective of the generalities in the industry. And so that, all contractors can come to the table and expect a certain level of uniformity. And so these are some of the things that were being discussed. So legislation, updating legislation, and then program administration and making it more uniform across the board. And so for the first time, the last couple of years, PACE Nation has brought together program administrators from across the country to collaborate and to talk and just, garner new ideas from that dialogue. And so that's very exciting, and we're glad to see that. And then the last topic that was very prevalent was securitization. And so many of the PACE transactions now are going through the securitization process. So the capital providers themselves don't hold the product as long as they used to, and there are a lot more big companies, and I think I talked about this before, that have swallowed up some of the smaller companies along the way, and merged and brought more synergies to finance in general. But that having been said, securitization is something that more of the industry is taking a look at. And that was a jam-packed couple of days at Pace Nation.
How big has this audience grown since you started going?
Oh,
2 times, 10 times, 20 times?
You know what? Oh no, it's it's probably maybe 1.5 times, a couple of times. It might be double the size now. Since I've been a member for the last 6 years, and I've seen about the same number of people, but sometimes different types of people. Some years there are more contractors and guests that come because they want to learn more about CPACE. Other times it's very capital provider heavy, or now that they have this program administration group, a great many program administrators coming to the table. So it kind of varies. So, you might lose one audience one year because they think it might be redundant. I've never found it to be redundant. I learn something every year. And so I think it's a great program, and it's necessary to have that annual gathering of like minds and business from across the nation.
Absolutely. Network is net worth, and like minds together create
Right.
incredible ingenuity and ideas. And it's not the first time Inland's been at the forefront of change. The DST itself, right? So these rooms do get bigger. Dan's there talking about the 1031 exchange. We lose that. That hurts the bottom line on on investment, on the cycle. If we lose CPACE, it can hurt our bottom line. How we eke out that extra little bit on renovation, redevelopment. And speaking of regulation and administration being swallowed up in changes, or at least drastically moving forward, both in education, networking from the MLS's national events. Saul's joining us there, I think just by phone though. He's got no video. He's also being hit hard now with regulation and changes over at the MLS. There's just so much changing. If we're not together, like-minded, talking about it, how do we thrive? That's why this show works. That's why the audience tunes in. Outside of the algorithms and the AI, the back end of marketing, I don't know how else to get there. Saul, can you talk? Are you with us?
Hey, I'm here. As a matter of fact, I am not on my phone. I'm at my computer, but for some reason the camera's not working. It's great to see you, Andreas, everybody else. I look forward to being able to chat with you. I feel like a secret agent, though, right? You can't see me. And,
Yeah.
But that's okay. You're right, Andreas. We're going through the residential real estate industry, buyers, sellers, everybody's dealing with preparing for August 17th. And for those that aren't aware, August 17th, we're going to see dramatic change in the way that real estate is looked at, shown, the way that offers are written, the way that listings are taken. It has to do with civil litigation that started in Illinois. You guys love it, huh? Started in Illinois, moved down to Missouri. It's spread across the country, and it became class action litigation that really was designed to, and it's settled by the National Association of Realtors and a number of other major players, designed to change the MLS, number one, the multiple listing service. And so since the mid 90s, the multiple listing service, that's where people go to look for properties that are available for sale. Agents do, so they can take people out and show them. Multiple listing service has been a unilateral offer of compensation. And of course, whenever competitors cooperate, the DOJ is skeptical. And so they've been after the real estate industry for at least the 50 years that I've been a real estate broker. And this civil litigation has kind of opened the door. And so as a result of the civil litigation, there is a $5 billion, actually 1.83, tripled to $5 billion judgment against the National Association of Realtors and a number of other major franchises and brokerage firms, settled by the National Association for about 418 million, and other entities settled as well. And then there were major practice changes. And one of those, the biggest, is the MLS can no longer be an offer of compensation. So no longer will you, when you represent a buyer of real estate, be able to go to the MLS and see what compensation is being added. That's gone. That now has to be, if you're a buyer representative and you want compensation, you're going to have to write that in the offer. If you're a listing agent, you're going to have to do a little bit more explanation about how the real estate marketplace works. The deadline that we have for this as an MLS and as an industry to be eligible for to be protected by the settlement is August 17th. So here we are, we're rolling up now the last 16 days. Actually, at my MLS, we're going to make the big change. That means we're going to take what is referred to as the CBB field, that's cooperate with buyer broker. We're going to remove that field from the MLS on August 12th. There's a number of other provisions. One, a big one, if you're a consumer of real estate, you need to understand this. And that is that in residential real estate, agents will no longer be able to take you out and show you property without a written contract. And that written contract must have an ascertainable language what the buyer broker is going to be paid. So no longer can buyer brokers depend on the MLS, other brokers to share compensation. Buyers might be asked to pay compensation to the person that represents them. So the whole thing is changing. I refer to it as a paradigm shift. We're talking about not just a change, but a fundamental change in the way business is done. People who list and sell real estate are going to have to be able to articulate their value proposition. Now, it's interesting, Andreas, because when I first got into the real estate business, the phrase was list to last. List to last. And that meant, if you really want to survive in the real estate business, you got to learn how to list. Now, your first day in the real estate business, you didn't typically get a listing, because listings required building relationships and having some knowledge and getting a commitment from a seller willing to commit probably their most valuable asset and commit some money to allowing you to market the property. And getting a seller to commit took trust and confidence, and it took a while I remember people who would knock on doors to build relationships and do mailings. Becca, that's right up your alley, right? Doing mailings, real mailing, just to kind of build relationships. You didn't get a listing your first day in the business, but the people that were successful in listing properties for sale, they were typically the most successful over the greatest period of time. And people who represented buyers didn't have to worry so much, because if they belonged to the multiple listing service, they were guaranteed they were going to get paid if they could drag a buyer across the finish line. Well, that's all changing. And now if you represent a buyer, you're going to have a written contract, and you're going to have to prove your worth one way or another, make that case, get a buyer to commit to you, and a written contract. And so this is major change, fundamental change in the residential real estate market. And everybody who lists and sells real estate or is associated with that is pretty busy these days.
Well, certainly they are. And it's not just residential. There is a cascading effect into commercial. And commercially, we've done it for years. We've always shown our value, quantified our value, contracted our value, and then put it out in every offer. But I'm now having small businesses, newer clients, push back immediately on the contract they would have signed without hesitation before, just because of all the buzz. So this cascading effect and this spillover from residential is coming over. We've handled it well, but just like the 1031, if that were to disappear, that cascading effect is the industry-wide effect. It's not just residential that's hurt. It's not just employment. It's commercial. It's the industry. It's all of us economically. But that's all messaging. And
here's an issue, Andreas, and you're right. There is this cascading effect. But in the residential space, because the settlement was so ambiguous, you've got a lot of people guessing as to what compliance is. And when you've got that, you've got some real problems, because typically the way then that we'll get clarity is through litigation. So whenever these things are unclear, the way that the matters get settled is through litigation. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So we're really, really concerned with compliance, making sure we understand what's required of us and making sure we comply. And that means hoping, and I get advice from the best attorneys in the country on this, but there is a lot of ambiguity. And so we're going to see just some real interesting times ahead. And yeah, everybody's going to have to deal with it one way or another. But the people who are listing and selling real estate and the multiple listing services that serve them have to be so careful right now. What we're doing at my MLS is I want to err on the side of being conservative and mitigating any potential damage right up front. And some people don't like that approach, but we're talking antitrust. And so we have to be so.
Well, and we've got some brokerages aren't saying it yet, but they're whispers. They're just not going to. They're not going to have buyer brokers, landlord rep only, so on. So it's an incredible time. It is a paradigm shift. Heard you talk about a few in our time together, but just as DSTs and regulation, secondary markets, marketing, AI, as AI moves faster and faster, regulation's still slow. So compliance will always be difficult from where I sit, but it's interesting to see it. Forefront.
Andreas, the other thing to highlight at this is the Department of Justice under the Biden administration is really still going after the National Association of Realtors. Saul, I don't think they're going to stop with this agreement. Do you?
No, I don't. I think we got to wait to see with this settlement if the DOJ weighs in. We know the DOJ has got. I know they first have got an institutional memory, and they want to decouple completely compensation between brokers. So I don't think that's going away. We also have seen a reopening of the Department of Justice's capability to issue CIDs, or basically subpoenas, to extract information from organized real estate. This is really a full court press. And there's a number of other issues. So no, I don't think they're going away at all. I think that we're going to see more rather than less. We might see that the settlement that we're all getting ready to comply with will become more stringent because of the Department of Justice ability to weigh in. So it's just a perilous time for people who are selling real estate. And of course, people sell real estate. That's what they want to do. They want to sell real estate. They don't want to be burdened with all this ambiguity and with all of this regulation. Nonetheless, we have to be real careful with it. But you're right, Dan, that we haven't seen the end of this.
There's more to come, but you're fresh back from Paris, the International MLS Conference, the forum, right? And more regulation isn't necessarily a bad thing once we know how to navigate it. It's been communicated.
Actually, Paris was last year. Yet the rest of the world is interested in MLS. Paris was last year. I think it was December, and this year it's in October, and it's in Milan. So I'm getting my tickets, ordering my tickets in my hotel room to be in Milan in Italy for the next MLS conference.
Dan, I think you and I are on the wrong side of the industry with Becca and Anna Maria. We go to places like Texas and residential's out there thriving and overseas.
Well, you got MIPIM, which is a wonderful conference over in Monte Carlo and Cannes and all those places. So I've been there twice, and that's the biggest commercial international real estate conference around. So we should go to that, Andreas.
Oh yeah, well, let's get comp tickets like Siri. Let's get comp tickets, and that'd be great. But it's an evolving world, right? Saul, is the industry going anywhere because of this? No, we'll continue. Some will leave.
People still need to buy. People still need to buy and sell houses, Andreas. Right, that's the bottom line.
That's why CPA 31, we're safe, and they're going to market it. All our jobs are secure. This table and everybody listening in, right? Our careers are secure. This is not going to disappear, except for those complaining, criticizing, and blaming. Then they're going to be out of the industry. They're going to fall behind. That's it.
There's actually great opportunity for people that are willing to look.
Yep. what I've adopted is, and this is to Becca and the AI and the change in algorithms. I use AI. I had to use AI. I didn't want to use AI, but there are things it does quick, smarter, faster. As long as I fact check it and I work on it, it helps me operate at a higher speed. I have more actionable intelligence through the CRECo.ai platform where I've aggregated data. So, insight and action, things that could propel that are great in AI. Less so in the MLS. In this changing environment, it's tricky, as we were saying. The UIs are changing, everything's changing. People are just going to have trouble and struggle with it, but we'll get through it as we have. There was at least here in Connecticut on the MLS, we had a facelift on our UI. They've made it easier for users everywhere, except for 80% of the users they already have. So it was a major upset, but they were working to improve. They just didn't realize most users aren't on the desktop; they're on their phones, and it's tough. I don't envy your position given all these changes. So, but you seem to be navigating it well.
Well, we're still having fun.
Well, you were out there before when this thing started, so it's quite a roadshow for you.
Saul, you have seen a lot of stuff in our real estate world and organized real estate, and by God, you're one of the folks that all of us stand on the shoulders of, and we are very proud that you're a part of this. I got to tell you, it's fun when people watch this show. People have reached out to me like, "Oh my gosh, you're on the same program with Saul Klein? Oh man!" And those are some of the people who are some leaders within the National Association of Realtors, and you've been working with them for a variety of years.
It's been a number of years. Thanks, Dan, and it's Andreas that kind of brought this group together, right? And so I just get to tune in with you guys once every month, and it's again, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't a lot of fun. So we're still having a great time.
Our audience loves it too. We keep growing, and thank you all for joining. And Saul, it is a gift to have you on the show, given your breadth and experience. And just your insight. Because it's not just historical experience. You are right there at the forefront when we're talking secondary markets. You're right there. So a true hat tip to you and all you do and all you have done. I jest with your car wash, but you've just seen it all, been through most of it. And now we're going through this for the first time together.
Hey, the car wash is doing great. Car wash is having a great summer, and there's nothing like it. But I want to give you some notes here. You're talking about data and statistics and AI, Andreas, in a handful, 15 of the major cities in the country. That's Washington, D.C., New York, San Francisco, Boston, Atlanta, those types of cities. 3% of the land mass, 3% of the land mass creates 58.5% of the GDP. I thought that was kind of interesting. 3% of the land mass creates 58.5% of the GDP and 38% of the tax revenues for these municipalities. So a lot of people looking at lots of things. They're bringing data together. They're using AI, as you mentioned, and they're coming up with information that gives more insight that makes decision-making easier. It's a changing world, and it's exciting.
And Saul, I'll add to that by saying that those same places and the office buildings, the industrial buildings, all of the commercial buildings within those areas are contributing to the 40% of polluting factors across the U.S. When it comes to inefficiencies in energy. So that's why, we talk so much about CPACE and trying to get energy efficiency and renewable energy projects up and running across the nation.
Well, that's really,
it's interesting to look at these buildings and then to think of these cities and to think of, and again, they're figuring all this stuff out. What's the right product mix in a city to generate the most revenues to allow for the cleanest environment? And it's like, how much of the property needs to be office, how much needs to be retail, how much needs to be residential, and there's a proper and a correct product mix, which we know with the abilities we have today with data, we can actually begin to figure this out, and we couldn't do this 10 years ago. So it's
True.
again,
Zoning, as in community planning, is now going to be left to the robots for what product mix to put where, or that could be where it's going. So the Commercial Real Estate Institute out of Boston has this visualization tool with Legos, and they're building exactly what you're talking about: real-time traffic analysis and product mix. And it was one of the most forward pieces of tech I've seen. And based on the data you just threw out there, and I'm sure you've got a host more, it must be pretty incredible to be on community planning, looking deep into those areas for the future. That's all. It's almost like marketing statistics. And as far as pollution, Anna Maria, and net zero carbon emission, we've all committed to it. We'll buy credits. We'll move around. I think we'll be okay. But
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, and I don't think that a lot of those things that Saul was mentioning would take humans out of the equation necessarily, because you still need to have relationships with those parties that are going to bring those uses to those types of, in whatever mix is determined is the best. And there are still going to be things that go wrong with installations and equipment that fails and that has to be repaired and maintained. And, so there's always going to be some human component along most of the lines in all of that.
The human overlay factor, the ones controlling and teaching the AI. Just like the assuming we can see what's happening and how to edit it, how to change it. Marketing is a bit of a black box as far as how those algorithms work and the shifts there too. Becca, any advice? We're already at the third part of the show. It's 6:42. Any advice for those listening in? I mean, regulation changes, algorithm changes. There's a lot of scary things here as far as complication. From a marketing standpoint, let's start there and move our way around.
So I would just encourage our audience to look it up. There are not, like, do some reading, do a little bit of research as to how, if you have a desired and preferred platform, do a little bit of research to see what has changed. There are blogs out there that have that information. There are articles, but you have to actually look for them to find them. This is not front page Yahoo News, but it impacts us as consumers and as business professionals pretty substantively. So you're going to have to look it up, though, unfortunately.
So there was, I had a trick for a long time with my brokerage business commercially, and it was Google My Business, right? I registered, I had my Google My Business, and I had reviews. And because no other commercial broker in the area was doing that, I was top of Google every day for years without paying enormous fees. So I'm very keen to understand the other tricks and tips to get through there. So looking up those blogs sounds like a great idea. But I got to ask, are we asking AI for the answer, or is AI not ready to give that answer? You have to go find the article.
Look, AI does give an answer. And I think for most of us, if we're doing a search, there's an answer that comes up at the top. I tend to read primary sources. I'm happy to look at a summary that AI is providing, but I do like to read primary sources in addition to that every single time. And I don't know, Andreas, if you're using Google My Business as a listing platform and adding content to it, but you can post on it like social media.
Oh yeah. No. I'm well. Just like a little thing, right? And it just does so well. Instead of spending $60,000, $90,000, $100,000, God only knows how much more on your marketing budget. It was a free service that did incredibly well because it was just at the edge of being the thing. And now everyone's using it.
Everyone's doing it now.
Yeah, everyone's got it. So what's the next thing? That's my good question.
Well, are you on Threads?
On what?
Threads?
No idea what that is.
Look it up.
I'm going to ask my AI chatbot right now. Moving over. With all these changes in the MLS, with regulation, in San Diego, car wash with AI, with all you're seeing, Saul, should people be scared? Should they be asking AI? Should they be going to, where should they be going? What should they be doing?
Yeah, no, I don't think people should be scared. I think, again, that this is a great opportunity and time in history. But I would use AI for sure. I love AI. I use it as my primary search. I actually like to see, Becca, I like to see the summaries, and I like it better than the ads. And then I can go from there. I saw an AI application the other day that took a video. You just plug the YouTube video URL, the address in, and it then listens to the video, summarizes the video, then you tell it to add more and it does more research. And with a couple of prompts, it creates an article from the video. Now, I remember I couldn't wait to buy Dragon software so I could have software that listened to me and then put it. I thought this was going to be the answer to articles. Well, obviously it wasn't, because it wasn't very good initially, and it didn't really couldn't really understand everything I was saying. But now with AI, it was amazing to me. Someone took a video that I had done and turned it into an article, like a 500-word article that was actually readable. And at the end, a link back to the video. So, yeah, I would say if you're not playing with AI already, that it's time to start playing with it. You'll be amazed with what it can do, and entertained at the same time.
So on a side note for data, with the MLS data, with your data, so you've got a video library, you have Realty Times, you've been a publisher, you've been a producer of shows yourself, right? So you have no fear of this AI, replicating you into a bot. It's just a great way to summarize or tweak material. Becca, you can interrupt me here from a marketing standpoint, right? So app.noda.ai is exactly what you just said. It takes whatever format I give it, notes it, qualifies it, quantifies it based on a prompt. If it's a sales presentation, objection handling, things like that. And it's incredible. It knows a meeting almost as well as I do, as far as intuition. But at the same time, what bothers me about giving AI too much is I don't want to talk to an AI chatbot. I don't want an AI support person dealing with it, a support thing dealing with it, support bot dealing with it. So those are my concerns there. But we're all using it. Yeah, absolutely right.
Well, my world, Andreas,
you're in the White House. There's no AI in the White House. There is there.
So from my standpoint, I'm a big, huge believer, as Anna Maria talked about, that networking, that personal contact stuff. I really hope people consider, when you're part of the National Association of Realtors, a couple things. One, I really like the new podcast that's come out. Patrick Newton is a brilliant guy with Shannon McGann. Shannon is in charge of all of NAR's their whole government agenda. She's in charge of the political agenda. She and Patrick do a really good tag team together of a podcast. They just did one for commercial, and I'm going to be promoting that tomorrow. But it's a really, really good podcast to hear all the different things. And they talk about the 1031. They talk about opportunity zones. They go over how they're taking off the table in Washington, how you shouldn't have to double capital gains rates or get rid of step-up basis. A lot of just really good meat and potatoes for our commercial brokers that are listening. And then an in-person event that the Realtors began a few years ago is the C5 CCIM Global Summit. And that is going to be September 17th. Thank you for showing that there. That's another wonderful opportunity to hear the latest things that are happening. And then, of course, you can't beat the networking. And these are commercial real estate professionals from all around the country and also from other countries. So this is a really great way for people to go. And the largest commercial real estate organization of realtors that come together is the National Association of Realtors. I think they have over 150 resi-commercial members that are out there. So it's 150,000. So it's a big deal for people to get involved and get engaged. And there will be talk there of AI and how to use AI. I think AI is a good tool, but it's clearly not the substitute, but it's something that can be used. But those are two things I'd like to leave with everybody today, is that, and of course, the thing I always want people to do is to get to know who your member of Congress is, and let their staff utilize you as a trusted resource in their congressional issues, because they need to have people that are boots on the ground in their districts that understand. And if I don't care what party you're at or what party they are, whoever your member of Congress is, you got to get to know them and help relate to them of why these different aspects of how our business works are important.
And protect the 1031. Don't let the distractions and everything happening on the MLS side, regulation and otherwise, distract you from protecting your 1031, because they fight for it every year. This is an ongoing battle. This is the first time there's a competing cause, right? There's a competing issue that's getting attention. So thank you for that. C5, you're speaking. What was the name of the show, the podcast you want us to promote?
It's called the Advocacy Scoop podcast. Sorry.
Advocacy Scoop.
From NAR, yes. Advocacy Scoop podcast from NAR. Yep.
Say it 3 times fast.
Yeah, that's right.
And one qualification there. You said resi-commercial agents. NAR has over 1 million members. It's the largest association of residential agents. Within it is CCIM, SIOR, the commercial agents, which I believe together, above and beyond CCIM, we have over 300,000, 400,000 resi-commercial or commercially dedicated.
It's a lot. Well, and then the other thing I want to highlight is the Realtors Land Institute. I just was in Denver. I forgot to mention this before. I just was in Denver last week, and the president-elect, Dan Murphy of the Realtors Land Institute, was there to help me present our 1031 Delaware Statutory Trust information, and then talk about how we all work together to defend the 1031. And Dan Murphy is just, he's like, if you've ever watched the TV show Bonanza, he's like the realtor for Mr. Cartwright. I mean, he does major land deals all across the country, and he's got a helicopter, a snowcat. He takes people everywhere to be able to see the land that he's the broker for. But I got to tell you, those Realtor Land Institute people, I just want to give a special shout out to. They're an unusual group of folks who are so loyal, and their friendship, once you get their friendship, it is just solid gold. Dan, I don't know anything about geography. That wasn't my subject. And I told him that, hey, I'm going to be in Denver to do this presentation. And he said, well, I'll be there. And come to find out, he drove 5 hours to be there. And then he had to drive 5 hours home. And he didn't think anything of it, because he says, you're my friend and member of RLI, and I'm with you. And that kind of loyalty and respect is just something that you can't, that no AI, no bot's going to be able to overcome. That loyalty and friendship that's made is just something that is special with NAR. And Dan Murphy is just a rock star. And I just wanted to highlight that today.
Well, you are who you're with. Network is net worth, right?
Yeah.
Anna Maria, what is the takeaway from your end on this?
Well, I don't know if there are bots in the government or what, but we've based on the Fed's release yesterday, same old, and so we're having some still high interest rates, and we're hoping to see some of those come down to benefit the CPACE industry. There are still deals getting done, but it is a little harder and it takes a little longer. And so we're hoping to see some of those monies free up shortly. People have more confidence, maybe, in the institutions, and seeing the interest rates at a different level, might be more enticing. But I still stand by the future is green, and that's my mantra, and it will definitely come around, and certainly this is not a political issue. It's not whether you agree with climate change or not, or with the fact is that it makes good common sense to save energy, save on your utility bills, make improvements to your properties. This is all just logical, good sense. And so we're proponents of just doing the good, sensical thing.
Well, and so there's a lot of different professions on the call. A lot of different professions get together in a transaction. Be the professional that inspires or directs your client or the parties in the transaction to go find that answer. CPACE is an answer. It's something people aren't considering. 1031 exchanges provide a lot of pathways to either a way to transact out of an asset they have or to get into other assets, invest together. There's just so many opportunities to provide value to clients and keep growing. Speaking of value to clients and growing, since we're talking events, C5, podcasts, and otherwise, I'd be remiss if I didn't say come join us to learn firsthand about AI, CRETech, PropTech, with 3,500 plus attendees in September for CRETech, in November for CRETech, 13th and the 14th. Use our special code to get a discount. Love to see you there. Talk with us. This show, and Anna Maria, I think back on what you said about the event you've been going to for 6 years. In 2015, there were only 80 technologies serving commercial real estate. We're here now in 2024, almost 10 years later. There are over 20,000 technologies, if you include PropTech servicing the space, right? So there's plenty of options, but what are the right options? And the right options are the ones that savvy, storied industry veterans are using and are proven, and that's where you find out about these things, is at events like this, is with the right people, like Saul, like you guys, everyone on this call. So I can't say how much I appreciate having you on the call. This call grounds me and reminds me why I'm out there, why we network, and why it's important. So echoing all of you, get involved, get with Congress, with Congress, senators, get in front of people. Don't get stuck behind your computer. That's
amen.
And the best thing of all for everyone on this call, we're all very good and comfortable, assumably on the phone. And the rest of the world, they just want to text. So business should be easier and easier to win if you can just pick up the phone, talk to people, meet with people. So that being said, I also want to give a thanks to our audience for tuning in religiously, growing with us, promoting us. Thank you for your comments, reviews. Tune in anywhere you get your audio, video, social media, maybe soon on Threads for Becca as soon as I figure out what that is. Ask your AI tool to summarize us, learn more with us. First Thursday of the month, every month here, the CRECo.ai Roundtable. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza, for hosting us, making us all look great. And thank you to my co-hosts and our audience. Looking forward to seeing everybody next month. Have a great rest of your August. Looking forward to growing together as always. Mr. Mendoza.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Roundtable, powered by CRECo.ai, your source for the latest in real estate and technology. For past episodes, sector interviews, and more great content, follow us on all social media and YouTube at CRECollaborative. You can also find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really does help. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next Real Estate Roundtable.